Hey, what's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm here today with another client interview for you guys. Excited to have Jason on with us to talk about his recruiting experience, which is actually very interesting um, because Jason will actually be he's coming from a non-target school, which I know a lot of you are as well. But he's actually going to be skipping banking altogether and going straight to a Megafund job. So I know that there's probably a lot of you out there who have heard that something like this is not possible or whatever. But obviously, we now know that it is. So I wanted to get Jason to come on here and talk about just how exactly was he able to accomplish that. So Jason, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sam, for having me.
Absolutely, man. So, to start off, I mean, I kind of gave a very, very high level overview already of your background, but you want to just maybe introduce yourself a little bit, tell people kind of like what your profile is, so they can know a little bit about you.
Yeah, definitely. So, hey, everyone. My name is Jason, and I'm currently a junior at a non-target university, majoring in finance. Going into school, I actually didn't really know what I want to do. I was actually came into school as a computer science major, um, and I thought that's what I want to do, like engineering, sort of like more of a STEM route, but realized really quickly that's not really for me. So I tried out a different types of internships within business because that was like kind of my second interest. So I did some internships in equity research, some in tech sales, and I actually did a banking internship my sophomore year during part time at school. And I think that's what really kind of stemmed my interest in finance and drove that interest home. So I went through initially the banking recruiting process and actually came across Sam's program before, right when it was about to kick off. And initially, me and Sam spoke and looped my mom in as well. But we thought that initially we could do this kind of whole recruiting process on my own because, I spoke to some alumni and which wasn't many coming from where I went to school, but they all told me how, they hustled and, just kind of figured things out on their own. And, I thought that's something I could do also. And, me and my mom decided to go that route the first time, realized really quickly how difficult, how many roadblocks there actually were. And it just made the process really, really unbearable at times.
Yeah.
And then, really quickly to wrap this up, I actually went back to Sam the second time to consult him once again. So I realized I was kind of just looping in circles and not getting anything in terms of offers, interviews, and just overall just a success. And went back to Sam, decided to enroll in the program, and then, within a month and a half, I got my first offer in banking. And then from then on, just kept getting, almost like every single super day I applied, every single bank I applied to got to the super day, the final round. Got multiple offers, but then ultimately, as kind of Sam mentioned, I decided to skip banking altogether and go the private equity Megafund route.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing, man. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So let's start from the beginning. So obviously, like you said, you go to a non-target school. At what point did you realize that you banking is maybe something you want to do? Was that like sophomore year, freshman year?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say it was kind of my sophomore fall when I did that part-time internship.
Okay.
It was at a boutique bank, and the reason why I thought this was a career that I wanted to pursue is because the amount of training that you get and the skills that you attain from banking is really unimaginable. Like I kind of mentioned, I did a bunch of different internships in different industries, and nothing was as challenging, as thought-provoking, and just kind of how variance in the day-to-day was in banking. I thought the skills you develop there, whether you want to make a long-term career here or use that as a platform to jump to something else, I think banking is one of the best careers you can start off in.
Yeah, got it. And so you decide you want to go into banking. Obviously, came across Wall Street Mastermind. What made you kind of reach out and want to have that first conversation with us initially? Like, what was going on at the time with recruiting? Typically, like people don't reach out to us unless they feel like maybe they need some help, right? Was there something that you were kind of like looking for extra help with, or certain parts of the recruiting process that was pretty challenging for you at the time? Like, where was your head at the time when you first found us?
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually a really, really funny story. So the first interview I ever had in banking was actually a family friend actually, helped me through the kind of the surface level of the interview process because that was the first time I ever interviewed at a bank before, and it was for a sophomore summer banking program.
Mhm.
And she actually essentially being high up there at the bank was able to kind of bypass me through some of the first, second rounds, went straight to a super day. And I don't know about you or any of the past students you've had, but going straight to a super day as your first interview is kind of daunting. Uh, so I kind of showed up there and like pretty much like for lack of better words, just caught myself my pants down. Like it was a very brutal interview. Did not think it was nowhere near like the same as any of the past internships I interviewed at. There was a whole technical portion I had no idea about. Like there's some of the behavioral questions that were just like so like just out of the box. I never even like kind of thought that they could be asked that. So I think that's the original reason why I thought maybe I needed someone like a coach or someone to help guide me through this process, since no one in my family, pursued finance.
Was
Especially,
this like a bulge bracket bank or elite boutique bank? Like what type of bank are we talking about?
yeah, it was a bulge bracket bank.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like a sophomore summer internship for like a very legitimate bank, basically.
Yeah, and I guess I spoiled that opportunity, but I guess made things work out at the
Yeah.
end.
Okay. Okay. So you failed that interview pretty badly and kind of realized like, hey, maybe I need some help preparing for these interviews, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. So then you came to Wall Street Mastermind, and then we talked, right? But that first time, I think you were, if I recall correctly, I think you were very close to joining, but ultimately you ended up not joining, right? So walk through that decision because I think a lot of students that we run into are kind of have been in that position before where they're like on the fence about Wall Street Mastermind. Um, there are certain parts to it that obviously sound really, really good. If in fact, maybe some people will even say sound too good to be true, right? But like, what was your mindset at the time, and like, what caused you to ultimately not join and work with us that very first time?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say it's two big things. I think first off was like I kind of mentioned earlier in my story. I spoke to some alum who had told me how they would do this all on their own. Um, and I don't doubt the fact that you can do that. I just think it's the much harder path and like much lower chance of success. And I think that's a reason why, especially coming from a non-target university with very limited alumni, kind of shows. I realize this banking recruiting process, especially for like internships specifically, it's very tailored and to kind of like their target school semi-target and target school applicants. And that essentially leaves the non-target schools kind of fighting for very little spots that are left over. And yeah, I realized that pretty much the hard way before I joined the program. And I think the second deterrent initially was the price. And for me, after kind of thinking about it, after going through the program the second time around, I realized that you should be thinking more about like this kind of investment, essentially an investment into Sam's program, just because like no matter what the price was, I think about in like not to be vain here, but like what you work and the salary you get in banking or private equity or whatever, finance job it is, it really does pay like 10, 20x times over. And if that's like a small investment that you need to make upfront to get to where you need to be, I'm happy to do that just because, like, for just a little bit way more personalized. I don't come from a wealthy family. I actually took out a loan to pay Sam's program. And I'm not saying that Sam's program is like that astronomically large. It's just that, as a college student who's struggling, I thought that this was worth it for my future. And, honestly, if I were to redo this again, knowing what I know now, I would have done it the first time. Who would have known what kind of results I could have got if I started earlier?
Right. I guess so. The biggest thing that I picked up on that you said there was you knew some upperclassmen who have done it without this program, and so you thought that, hey, if they could do it, then maybe I like, why shouldn't I be able to do it, right? And I think to your point, I agree with you 100%. It's like, of course, you can do it without this program. Anything is possible, right? Um, and I think a lot of other students also, like sometimes that becomes a reason for why they don't do it either, right? Because they're like, oh, I know so and so who did it without this program, so if they can do it, why can't I? And the I don't think that's really the right question to ask. Is like, can I do it without this program? Because of course you can, right? I think the question that I would be asking is, what is the probability of me doing it without this program versus what is the probability of me doing it with this program, right? Because it's all relative, and ultimately I can go to any school in this country, almost any school, I won't say every school, but almost any school in this country, and find at least one person who has gotten into banking on their own, right? Does that mean it's likely? No. Like because I can find a lot more people from those exact same schools who tried on their own who didn't get into banking, right? Like just like statistically, we know that to be true, right? Because banking is a very competitive thing. So at the end of the day, what you're doing by joining this program is not you're not joining this program because this is the only way into investment banking. We would never claim to be that. But you're only joining this program because it's going to massively increase your chances of succeeding, right? And obviously, like money is the other factor. Like you said, it's like, hey, this wasn't a cheap investment for, especially for your family, and like it's not like some crazy number, especially compared to what, honestly, compared to what people are paying for college these days, is nothing, right? But still, like you even like went and took out a loan for this and whatnot. Um, but that's actually a really good analogy. Is kind of like if I said, hey, Jason, would you rather, you have two choices. Would you rather go to the non-target school that you go to, or would you rather go to Wharton or Harvard or Stanford, right? Wharton, Harvard, Stanford is going to be more expensive than going to non-target state school or whatever school you go to, but you're going to have a much better chance at getting the type of job you want, right? And I think a lot of people, when you think about it that way, they understand it. They're like, well, yeah, of course I would rather go to Wharton. Of course I would rather go to Harvard. Not because if I go to the non-target state school, then can't I have zero chance of getting a job that I want. But obviously, my chances would be a lot better if I go to a better school, right? This is no different than that, And some people will get financial aid, some people will take out student loans, some people will do all sorts of things just to go to the school that they want. But if we really think about why they're doing that, well, why do you want to go to the school that you want? Oh, because it's going to help you get a better job, right? So in my mind, I think it's the exact same thing. It just comes down to like, hey, we're all trying to do the best that we can, but it's just very competitive, right? And most top banks, bulge bracket banks, elite boutique banks, they each accept maybe 1 to 3% of their applicant pool. So are you the type of person who wants to have, you know, whatever competitive advantage you can have over the competition, or are you the type of person who's just like, hey, I don't care as long as I have even a 1% chance, I'm good with that, right? And I think asking the right questions is really important, right? Because if you ask bad questions, you're not going to get to a good answer, right? So I think totally get where you're coming from is super common, right? Obviously, then you went through the process on your own for I think like a couple months, right? Like on your own, um, and you decided to come back, which you're also not the first person to do that. But like, what what happened during those couple months when you went out and tried on your own? Like, what did you find? I guess, or like, did you go through a bunch of interviews and it just like didn't work out, or did you like not get interviews at all, or like what was happening?
Yeah, definitely. So after that kind of that sophomore, bulge bracket interview that I kind of mentioned, And then after kind of speaking with you the first time, I decided to go in the process alone. And essentially, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I sent out about like 10, 15 applications and got 2 interviews. And those were just from cold applying. I didn't understand that there was a concept of networking or anything like that. In all honesty, after kind of going through this process, I realized that even just getting those 2 interviews was kind of a strike in the dark. But obviously, just getting the first round didn't really change much because I didn't know anything about like technical questions or behavioral questions. I
Yeah.
kind of just thought as long as I let my personality shine, they'll do
Yeah.
the job. That
Yeah.
was not true.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think you had a pretty solid resume at the time already, too, right? That's the other thing is that you have pretty strong work experiences and things like that. So, even just based on that, you were able to get 2 interviews. Um, but you didn't get past the first round for either one of them, right? And then so credit to you though, you came back early enough to still for us to be able to help you, right? So then like what what actually what actually changed after you came back though? Like because obviously you probably had your own way of how you were approaching this beforehand, right? Like how you were going about prepping for the interviews. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit too. Like what were you doing before Wall Street Mastermind? And then like what what did you do after you came back the second time and then you decide, okay, now I'm going to do this program? Like what difference did it actually make?
Yeah, definitely. So for the first time when I was doing this on my own, the way I kind of prepped for interviews was using the typical like 400 question guide that I'm sure everyone knows is floating around. And
No,
honestly, just
I've never heard of that before. What is that? No, I'm just
uh, yeah, no, that PDF that's just been floating around for years. Just study off that, and then just Wall Street Oasis like forums and just googling like top 10 questions that are asked in banking interviews, something very vague like that.
yeah,
Um, and that was essentially my initial kind of like prepping before going through Wall Street Mastermind, and then obviously I think a lot of banks are getting a little smarter about how they ask these questions and just like trying to understand that these kids are just memorizing, so they need a different way of asking these questions. And unfortunately, I've learned that the hard way. So when I came back, the huge difference in all was honestly everything. So first off, I would probably talk about is probably the most important was like the networking part, the networking module. So by way of background, if you guys don't understand like how Wall Street Mastermind works, is that Sam has curated with like top professionals like these different training modules broken up into 3 separate categories. It's networking, behaviorals, and technicals. And so the networking module essentially broke down exactly from step 1 to the finish line about curating your alumni list, your outreach list for cold emails. So you could get on the phone with these bankers and learn about what they do, and then hopefully make a good first impression so they get pushed forward for interviews instead of just applying in a I like to call the dark hole of resumes.
yeah,
All these banks like get hundreds of thousands of applications, and you need to stand out some way, and that's through networking.
yeah,
And that's especially important if you don't have a strong alumni base that like some of the more target and semi-target schools have.
yeah,
Um, Secondly, like the behavioral modules, that is more about crafting your answers to those more fit-based questions. And I thought this was super helpful because I actually worked really closely with one of the coaches who was a ex-investment banker, and she led recruiting at like one of the top bulge bracket banks. Me and her actually got really close, and she spent like literally hours with me outside of her typical work hour times to just craft the answers on a personalized basis. She was fantastic, and we're still in contact today just because of how big of a mentor she was. And she really just, yeah, she literally tore up my answers and pretty much made me into a whole different person and on
this is
paper.
Allison, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, she's amazing.
She's great.
Um, yeah, and then lastly, the technical modules is more about taking what's in the guide from like a memorization standpoint, and actually Sam teaching you personally how these things like work on paper and Excel. I think understanding more of the fundamental basics of accounting and finance evaluation is much more important than memorizing the answers, because like I said earlier, a lot of the questions that I got in interviews nowadays are either variations of the question, so they know that you're not just memorizing, or takes things one step further to test your critical thinking. And after kind of going through Sam's training modules, speaking with like Alice and the other coaches, I truly felt after exiting the program or finishing the program within a month in terms of the modules, like I was able to kind of kill all the interviews going forward.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing, man. I mean, so the second time around, I guess, like after joining the program, because you had two interviews before the program, right? And you got to the first round and didn't really work out. Like, how many interviews did you have after joining the program? I guess let's start there. Like, how many did you get more interviews in the first place, or?
Yeah. So I think ballpark I applied to like between 7 to 10, I believe, during the program, and I got all to the final round.
You got the final round for every single one of them.
Yeah, and I got a yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you went from 10 to 15 applications and getting two first rounds to 7 to 10 more applications in the second batch and getting to every single super day.
Yeah.
Okay. And did those turn into offers, or was the like what was the ultimate outcome, I guess?
Yeah, so I had a few banking offers, but then the as you mentioned earlier, the Megafund actually extended me an offer as well, and I decided to ultimately skip the banking route.
Hmm. Okay, got it. Um, let's talk about that a little bit. So getting into banking is obviously hard to do, but I would probably say getting straight into a mega fund. And for those of you, hopefully you guys know what a mega fund is, but for those of you that don't know what a mega fund is, just like basically the largest private equity firms out there, right? Like think the Blackstone, Apollo, KKR, TPG type of firms, right? They each manage tens of billions of dollars that they're investing, right? And so a lot of people to work at those types of funds, they have to typically do the investment banking analyst gig for 2 years first out of college, and then they go into these private equity firms, right? What's happened in recent years is that I'm just giving people context. A lot of these mega funds have started recruiting directly out of college. Um, and so they created like an analyst equivalent position similar to what you would get at the investment banks. And they're going directly to the schools to recruit these students. But my understanding is that typically, because there are very few of these jobs, right? Definitely way fewer positions for these analyst positions at mega funds than at the big banks. One, they're a lot more selective, and they're a lot more. It's a lot more exclusive, if you want to call it that. And two, my understanding is that a lot of these mega funds they recruit almost extensively from like their target schools, right? And their list of target schools is also a lot smaller. It's not like they have 20 different target schools and maybe like, oh, if you go to Harvard, Wharton, and like, two other schools, right? So coming from a non-target school, how are you able to even like get your foot in the door for an opportunity like that? Like, I'm sure if you go on Wall Street Oasis and ask around, people will tell you to forget about it, right? I mean, honestly, that's what people say, right? Oh, if you don't go to XYZ school, or if you don't have a 4.0 GPA, or you don't have this or that, like you can forget about it, right? So, how are you able to really do that? Because that's like very that's like an exceptional outcome, I would say, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a little bit of luck played in this one. But yeah, I mean, I think, just a few things. I think one, the fact that my resume did have a lot of relevant experience. So I guess just to backtrack a little bit, Sam is completely right. Like a lot of these, summer internships for juniors at these, private equity firms are almost exclusively to target school students.
Yeah.
And it's in particular, they like to see people who've done like a bulge bracket sophomore summer banking internship in advance. Now, I didn't have that, but I did have a banking internship as a sophomore,
Mhm.
even if it wasn't at like a, name brand bank as like some of the others. But nevertheless, it was the same experience, in my opinion. And then, also just having a lot of the other I had a lot of other stronger names on my resume, that weren't exactly directly banking, but, they did, I think show out above the rest in terms of the applications. And ultimately, I did have a strong relationship with the person at HR. As I said earlier, I'm from a non-target. There's actually no one at this Megafund from my school.
Yeah.
Um, but she flagged my resume, and she showed it around apparently to the team, and they thought they would like to give a chance on me, which is where I said the luck kind of played in. Now the recruiting process was very rigorous, just because as I mentioned earlier, I had few banking offers that were expiring in terms of dates, and we had to turn everything around within 1 to 2 weeks. So I had interviews almost like every other day, just to meet everyone on the team. And, I didn't really have as much of a, I guess, experience with more of a buy side recruiting process. So a lot of the questions were a little out of the box. But I think just because of the strong foundation I built through Wall Street Mastermind, I was able to kind of navigate my way around the questions, explain my thought processes, and just ultimately, just land offer.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're being a bit humble here by saying you lucked into it, but ultimately what it sounds like is, I mean, really you had to create your own luck though, right? I mean, I'm a big believer that, I mean, obviously luck is involved in everything you do, but I'm a big believer that you have to create your own luck, as in you have to put yourself in the right place at the right time, and you have to be prepared to take advantage when opportunity comes knocking, right? And so obviously sounds like you networked your way in through this HR contact at this firm, and then she got you the interview, and then you had to be prepared for what was a very rigorous interview process. How many rounds did you have to go through? Do you remember? Or how many people did you have to meet before you got the offer?
Yeah, so it was 4 rounds.
4 rounds. Okay. So typically banking interviews are 2 rounds, right? So four is a lot. And I imagine like you said, with these investing type buy side rules, probably a lot more, um, what we, because you mentioned they were asking some out of the box questions, or more than what you would expect in a typical banking interview. So do you have one or two examples of kind of outside the box questions that they asked you that were really memorable or just stood out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think what the difference here between a typical bank interview is that there's no, at least from what I've saw, there wasn't a typical guide, like you said, like the 400 questions that you could consult for a baseline area. I was literally just Google prepping alongside the typical banking prep I had prior. But I think one of the one or two out of the box concepts was one was a very heavy emphasis on leverage, LBO questions. And even if your group isn't directly related, they do expect you to have a baseline knowledge of that,
Sure.
which is not typical for banking interviews. And then secondly, they ask a lot of kind of those brain teaser questions. They are highlighting the 400 question guides.
Yeah.
It's a lot more about kind of seeing your thought process, because there is a there is a right answer typically, but it's okay if you get it wrong, as long as your process is somewhat in the right track.
Yeah.
And I'd say third on the out of the box is there's a lot more case interviews. So they give you a lot more kind of scenarios on either a potential investment, if it's viable or not, or they give you a bunch of numbers and say build a paper LBO, or a mock 3 statement model and projection. So it was a lot more in depth, and it was a lot less kind of hiding behind the 400 question guide. It was a lot more applying what you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
So basically,
Yeah.
more open-ended case type questions, where for those open-ended questions, you can't memorize the answers ahead of time. So it's really you have to apply the knowledge that you already have. Same thing with
Exactly.
the modeling test that you're talking about. You can't really memorize the answer to the modeling test ahead of time because you're seeing it for the first time. So it really comes down to having your skill level and your knowledge level has to be at the level where you're not just memorizing and regurgitating answers anymore. You're actually applying what you've already learned. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And also one thing I will factor in, if that wasn't enough to kind of scare you guys, I guess, is like secondly, like you also have to like make sure your personality shines. You know, there's the teams are much smaller on the buy side, I realized, and like they care a lot more about your fit too.
Right.
So you not just have to be knowledgeable, but also like mesh well with the group since the teams are smaller, and then you get them a lot more responsibility.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So I guess one last question on this. But because you mentioned, Googling and stuff like that, right? One question that a lot of people ask, because you were describing kind of what you did earlier once you got into Wall Street Mastermind, how that was different from what you were doing before on your own and using the 400 questions guide and whatnot, right? I think one criticism, I don't know if it's a criticism, but one thing we hear a lot from, ironically, people who had never used the program before is that, oh, well, like whatever Wall Street Mastermind is teaching you, they're just teaching you stuff that is already all out there on Google, or like you can find exactly everything that they would teach you in the program on the internet, right? So like basically the point is there is no point. There is no point to a program. It's like everything you need is already available out there. What are your thoughts on that? Or like, do you agree with that statement, disagree with that statement, and then like why?
Yeah, so to be frank here and candid, that is so far from the truth in my opinion. Just because I'm living proof of that. Because like the first time around, I know I mentioned that like I may have not done as much as I thought, but I truly did study through the guides. Like if you literally asked me like a question back then when I was going through the recruiting process, like I could literally recite the answer word for word because that's how hard I study for the guides before I'm going through Sam's program. But like I said, like that's not enough. And let alone like I think Sam's program is different from just like Googling like Wall Street Oasis forums and like going through like Wall Street Prep and the other packets and all those other kind of quote unquote proprietary programs. Is that you don't get that personalized attention. That's number one. Sam holds like weekly office hours with the other students, and the students are a very small group anyway, so you get a lot more personalized attention, like you would in a small classroom. And secondly, like these modules are so kind of tight knit and like so much more like ironed out in the details than just scouring general information on the internet. Because Sam's formula that he really just like the videos are also chronological in how you should be like approaching interview prep and just networking also. So this is like in my opinion, it's like an all-in-one, very structured kind of like honestly like cheat sheet, I want to call it at this point, because like it really just broke down the whole recruiting process and demystified it. Because a lot of people, especially me, when I first started coming from a non-target university, like there was no, aside from my handful of alumni, there was no kind of guidance I had that a lot of my friends who were at like the Harvard or Yale or Princeton's of the world that like had like literally like a pipeline where banks would come to on campus for on-campus recruiting and just say like, we're gonna take like 20 of you, and like after that we'll see how many is left. Yeah, and then we'll see how many is left for the other schools. So like I'm not gonna say it's like easy or it's like not hard work. I'm not saying just because you go through Sam's program like you're gonna get an offer. Like you still need to put like the work in. But like why not go to a place where everything is all the tools are there for you, organized and structured place rather than scour and waste time on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up a couple good points there, which is, and the two that I really want to hit on is one, the doing everything sequentially in the right order and having the structure is really like the importance of that cannot be overstated, right? Because people say, oh, everything you need is already on the internet. Well, is it? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, right? But like the internet, first of all, it's not going to tell you, hey, Jason, for your background and story specifically, this is how you should talk about it, right? Like whatever information is out there is generic information. It's not customized. But second of all, like to say like, hey, all the ingredients that you need are out there already. It's kind of like me saying, hey, I'm going to bake a cake. I know what all the ingredients for baking a cake are. I'm not going to follow a recipe. Like the order with which you put in the ingredients and mix it together and then like put it in the oven and whatever comes out, like it matters, right? Like I mean, most of the people that are listening to this probably don't bake a lot, but like if you have baking experience, you know that it's more than about just having the right ingredients. It's also about doing it in the right order, or otherwise your end product is not going to come out correctly, right? So having that structure and having that the right order of operation for how you do things, one, is going to save you a lot of time from not having to like make mistakes and backtrack and do a bunch of trial and error on your own and figure it out. The second of all, like not only going to be more efficient, you're going to get a better outcome in less time, right? Why is that important? Because we all know how quickly the investment banking recruiting talent moves nowadays, right? I mean, heck, like halfway through sophomore year, all these banks are opening up their applications, and most of the time people are getting caught off guard, and they're like, "Whoa, what? Like applications are already open? Like I haven't started networking yet. Or, oh, I don't really know how to answer these interview questions yet." And like, you're not just up against the clock, but you're effectively running a race against your peers, against your competition, right? Whoever can run the fastest is going to win the race, right? And like a lot of these offers, once they're given out, they're done. Then you don't have a chance at that anymore, right? So I think like that's a really important point, which is like, can you find everything online? I mean, sure, but actually, I don't think you can. But even if you think you can, it's going to take a lot longer, and it's just not going to be as effective. It's not going to be as customized, right? And so I think that's something that like most people don't really realize when I think about that. And also, you gotta understand. I honestly, I have like a more, even more, have even more cynical uh, interpretation of why people are telling people this misinformation, which is if you listen to a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, everything you need is already online," um, sometimes these people are like, they don't want you to do the program. They don't want you to join Wall Street Mastermind. Because why would they? If you join Wall Street Mastermind, that's a competitive advantage that you have that they don't have. Because they're not willing to invest in themselves. And so they don't want you to invest in yourself. But you're their competition, right? So you just got to do what you think is best for you ultimately, right? And if you believe that you need the help, um, then you should get the help, right? And there's no, the other point that you made too that I really want to hit on is like, was it still hard work after you joined Wall Street Mastermind? Yeah, absolutely. People might sit here and listen to this interview and think that what we're saying is, oh, if you just join Wall Street Mastermind, then it's going to be easy and this thing's going to be handed to you on a silver platter and we're going to guarantee you an offer and this and that. It's like, no, we're not guaranteeing an offer. Nothing's guaranteed, right? You absolutely still have to work your butt off, right? I don't think you slacked off at all after you joined the program. You worked just as hard as you did prior to the program. It's just that if you're going to put in that amount of work, how much are you going to get out of it, right? Like, because you're still competing against other people. So it's still not guaranteed that you're going to get a job. So you're not going to say, oh, well, now let me only work 70% as hard as I would have because that's all I need to do to skate by. You're not going to do that. You can't do that. You still got to give it 100%. You still got to work hard. Got to have a good work ethic. You still got to grind, right? We're not here to make it easy for you. We can't. Because some people are like, oh, that's cheating. Like, if I do this, then I don't deserve to get this job. It's like, no, like you still have to work your butt off. But it's just that all of that work is actually going towards getting the results that you want and it's not being wasted, right? LeBron has a bunch of trainers and like therapists and coaches and nutritionists, and he has an entire team behind him that works on his body throughout the year. He spends $1.5 million a year on his body. Why do you think LeBron's the greatest basketball player in the world? Why do you think he has so much more longevity than other people? Why do you think he's so much stronger, faster, jumps higher, plays better, even though he's like, I don't know, what is he, like 36 years old now, right? Which is like an old man status in the NBA. Why do you think he's able to do that? Because he's one of the only players that I know that spends that much money, invests that much money in his body, on his own time to get help. And nobody's going to sit here and tell you like, oh, well, LeBron cheated, so he's not the greatest basketball player of all time because he got all this help, right? Nobody says that. Everybody's like, holy crap, LeBron's amazing. Does anybody doubt LeBron's work ethic? Does anybody doubt like how much work he puts in to be where he's at? Like, is he going to be the greatest basketball player in the world just because he got all this help? No, he got the help and he works harder than everybody else. That's why he's the best, right? So it's the exact same thing, right? Like, guys, like if you're listening to this, the reason why I'm hitting this point so hard is because I don't care if you join this program or not. I'm trying to teach you guys how to think. You know, like the way you think and the way that you make decisions, that's gonna determine the outcome for you. Like if you have good inputs, you're gonna get good outputs. If the way you make decisions, the way you think about these things, the way you evaluate these opportunities, whether to invest in a program like Wall Street Mastermind or not, if your entire premise is wrong in the first place, you're not going to make good decisions. Ultimately, that's what's important. So, anyway, Jason, I think this conversation has been super enlightening and super helpful. If nothing else, I think hopefully it's given people more belief that outcomes like this is possible, right? Especially like all the non-target school students out there who are maybe feeling discouraged from reading all sorts of junk online about what's possible and what's not possible. Like anything's possible if you are determined enough, if you're committed enough, you're willing to invest in yourself, willing to work your butt off, and you're not too proud to get help, right? So for those of you that are listening to this, if that sounds like you and you understand that something like this could really help you accelerate your career and really just elevate your trajectory, and it's something that you want to be a part of, then I want to invite you to just reach out and book a free strategy session with us. That's always the first step, is to just have a free strategy session. It's on the house. Talk to us about your situation. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What challenges do you have? What do you need help with? And then like, depending on what you tell us, we may or may not be the best fit to help you. That's the other thing I'll say is like, we're not the best fit for everyone. You know, maybe you don't need our help, or maybe the problem that you have is not something we can actually help you fix. We'll be very honest with you about that. But if we know that we can't help you get to where you are, a lot of times we have more belief in you than you even have in yourself, right? You have no idea how many students that come to us and talk to us, and they're like, we ask them like, hey, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And they're like, oh, I like a 2. And then by the time they're done with the process, they get into some top bank. And sometimes you just need somebody to believe in you, right? And the reason why we're able to believe in you is because we've seen what's possible. We have so many points of references of students that come from these disadvantaged backgrounds that are still able to get in, whereas you don't have that point of reference, so you think it's not possible, right? So that's why we have these conversations. That's why we have to do these client interviews. We want to show you as many examples as possible of students like Jason who have been able to do what is seemingly impossible, what you've been told is impossible. It's not impossible. You just gotta have the right approach. You gotta have the right help. All right. So if you guys are interested in doing that, go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST. So again, it's www.wallstmastermind.com/apply. And you can book a time with our team. Be happy to talk to you and help you figure out what the best move forward is from where you are today. All right. So Jason, thank you again for taking time to come on here and share your experiences. Huge congrats to you on what is obviously an amazing outcome. I'm sure you're excited. I'm sure your mom is excited. Still remember my first conversation with her, so I'm glad we didn't let you guys down. And you know, look forward to obviously seeing all the success that you have going forward. And you know, I'm sure you'll still be active in the community, and we look forward to just continuing to help you as you are progressing your career, man.
Yeah, definitely. And Sam, just real quick before we end this call, so I want to make like 2 points also clear here about the programs. Like first off, I don't think Sam mentioned this, but Sam's program has like over a 90% success rate. And this kind of goes off the point that he says that he doesn't accept everyone into the program. And the reason for that is because like obviously from a business standpoint you want to make sure your clients are successful, and then secondly like from more of a consumer's perspective or like a client's perspective, there needs to be a match there where like an outcome is possible. And like kind of Sam mentioned that they usually have a lot, that his team has a lot more confidence in you than you may have in yourself. And I'm like, you know, a living example of that. I just thought that something like my school name was a big deterrent, but you know, in all honesty, like if you could control the things that are within your power, like your GPA, like Sam can't change that. That's up to you. If you could keep a high GPA, if you could, you know, be proactive on school, make sure you're part of clubs and, you know, making sure you get good opportunities and, you know, really hustle when you need to hustle, you know, that everything falls into place in my opinion. So like, I know like this, you know, there are a lot of other students out there that weren't, I was in their shoes who are very discouraged about like the whole, you know, typical like stigma that's floating around the internet. But you know, I honestly think like if you really work hard, you know, you will be rewarded in one way or the other. So I just think you know, Sam's program is very, very, you know, very helpful. You know, it was really actually life changing if you think about it. Like 5, 10 years from now, where I end up, you know, this literally could have been the foundation of what I built upon that. And secondly, like I just think like don't, if I could give like one last piece of advice here, it's like don't take things for kind of granted and leave it up to chance. I think like if you have the opportunity to change your outcome, make things like a lot more of a like a dream come a lot more become a reality, kind of like how joining Sam's program versus if I were to just continue on my own. And if money is the only thing that's kind of like stopping you, and again, it's not a large sum of money that really is life changing. Um, I think like you have to start thinking on changing your perspective on things and seeing things more of an investment, because this is no different than you like investing in the stock market, for example. Like everything is a risk, but at the same time, like what, you know, will you be kicking yourself 5, 10 years from now and not thinking you took that chance? You know, so yeah, I know that's super cliche, but that's my words of
Oh,
advice.
no, it's not cliche at all. In fact, I think that most people don't realize that they should think about it that way, right? And by the way, I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, I didn't even bring that up, but Michael's right. I mean, look, we won't take you into our program. We won't even take your money if we know that we can't help you. Because selfishly speaking, I mean, first of all, it's just the right thing to do. That's a matter of integrity. But second of all, um, if we take someone in and they don't get an offer, that does more damage to our business in the long run than whatever little bit of money that we might make off of that one transaction, right? So we're in this for the long haul. We're trying to help as many people as we can. We're only going to be able to do that if we always try to do right by our clients. So you have my promise that that's what we're always going to do. Right? That's why I say you guys should talk to us and just see if it's a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, like I said, we'll be very honest with you and we'll just tell you that. Like we turn people down all the time. We'll still give them advice. And so you get something from talking to us regardless, but like we're not gonna ask you to pay for this program unless we know that it's gonna be a great investment for you, right? Unless we know that it's like Jason said, like you can make, if this sets you up to have a better career for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, how much is that worth to you? Right? Like I honestly truly believe that being able to start your career in banking versus just like some other normal 9 to 5 job, let's say, it's worth 7 figures over your career. Like the incremental improvement that is, right? And so you can invest your money in the stock market if you want. You can put it into cryptocurrency. You can do whatever, right? But like at the end of the day, whatever you choose to allocate your capital to, whatever you choose to invest in, it's a risk reward analysis. How much are you risking? And what is the potential reward if you're right? Also, what is the probability of you being right? Because you can say, oh, I can make 1,000 times my money in crypto. Yeah, but what's the probability of that happening? It's very, very, very low, right? The probability, if you're accepted into this program, which again, not everyone will be, it's more than 90% chance that you're going to start your career off on the best foot possible. And like I said, the ROI on that is in the 7 figures. You're just not going to get that type of risk reward anywhere else. The best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. Truly believe that. And if you don't believe that, then I don't know. Then you got to rethink. You got to rethink what you think about yourself, right? Like truly, the best investment you can make is always an investment in yourself. right? And so that's what we're here to help you do. And yeah, all of our clients that have gotten the results that they wanted have told us that this has been life changing for them, and that's honestly, truly, what makes this so fulfilling for us to do what we do. Because people are like, "Oh, Sam, why'd you leave banking to go do what you are today?" And people think like, this is like, why would anyone do that? It's like so much cooler to be an investment banker, right? It's like, no, I get a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction out of helping people do what I've already done, right? And I make a good living doing it too. I'm not going to deny that, but we love what we do because we love helping people. We love changing lives. We love having that type of impact. And what we're building here at Wall Street Mastermind is a lot more than just, hey, helping you get into banking. We're also building a community and a network. Think about, like, I mean, Jason knows this too. Like, once you're in Wall Street Mastermind, you're always in Wall Street Mastermind, right? And in the future, we're gonna have thousands of very successful people that have gone through, banking and or PE or buy side on Wall Street. And these are the type of people that you want in your network, whether it's like job opportunities, investment opportunities. Like, your network is your net worth, right? There's a saying, your network is your net worth. It's about who you know, right? And so a lot of our clients, they become friends with each other, they help each other out. And these are lifelong relationships, right? So anyway, not to belabor the point, I think we're going off on tangent here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this interview. Um, Thank you for that extra little pitch at the end, Jason. I didn't ask him to do that, but I do appreciate it. And book a call with us. We look forward to talking to you and helping you in any way that we can, regardless of whether that means you work with us or not. And we look forward to talking to you guys. All right. So, guys, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. And Jason, again, thank you for your time. And we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. All right.